Welcome back to another episode of The Extraordinary Project. I am your host, Robi, and this is the somewhat coherent ramblings of a fella who just wants to become the best version of himself. And hopefully, along the way, maybe you'll learn something and become a little bit better at the same time. So last week I returned, first episode back for a long while, and I had a bit of a dribble about where I am right now. At the moment, I spoke about my journey and the importance of taking action to elicit change. So today I want to tell you something about a little bit more, actionable, a little bit more specific advice, something real, something tangible. So today I want to tell you about my game-changing method, plan, styles, I don't really know, to be honest. Nutrition program that has helped not just me, but all of my clients get some really, really good results through their nutrition. And it actually takes minimal effort and minimal calories tracked. Let's get straight into it. So it's a structure or a plan that can be managed. It can be adapted to fit just about any goal without forcing you into a whole heap of planning, tracking, or effort. Because see, when I started looking into my nutrition properly about 7 years ago, I tried a few different variations or methods to help me and see what kind of results I could get and what worked. I tried intermittent fasting. So basically I wouldn't have anything to eat until about midday, and then I would have a really big meal because I was starving. I just went protein crazy. So I just tried to eat as much protein as I possibly could. I tried tracking every single calorie, and I even used these meal plans that were definitely not designed for human use, because at one point I ate a meal that had 100 grams of chicken breast and then 500 grams each of broccoli and sweet potato. It took me about 30 minutes to eat, and I hated every moment of it. I tried whole foods only, so only eating whole foods, cutting out processed stuff. And then when I specifically got into endurance training, I went down the route of just eating as much food as I possibly could, especially a lot of carbs. And it worked really, really well when I was training for endurance training. And every time I go back into some sort of high level of training, it's really, really easy. But when I'm not training, it can get a little bit harder and a little bit more difficult. So this is how I went from all over the place to building something very consistent and a structure that I can use day to day, month to month, and it just maintains. It helps me stay in good nick. If I want to push a bit more in, I can. If I want to pull a little bit more out, and I can just adapt for the goal that I'm aiming for. And I call it the 4-meal method. And this is how it works. So you're going to have 4 meals per day, roughly 3 to 4 hours in between, with about 35 to 50 grams of protein in each one, as much fruit and veg as you could possibly want or need in across the meals. We're trying to get at least one serving of each in at each one, and sticking to close to 80% whole foods, as close as you can. And it's essentially 4 or 5 rules that if you just follow most of the time, you're going to see real, genuine results with very little effort. The other thing is that even when you have an absolutely awful day or an awful week, or you've just got back from holiday and things are all over the place, if you just return to what you were doing before, you'll be able to jump straight back in really easily. It doesn't take a lot of effort, and you can just repeat the steps you've already taken. Let's break it down quickly. So 4 meals. So the main reason we go for 4 meals is it's going to keep you fed and energized throughout the day. It's going to stop you from binging at certain times, and it's going to keep your energy consistent always without having to rely specifically on stimulants that are probably going to negatively impact your sleep as you go. By eating those 4 meals, and they don't have to be big ones. They can just be, like I call it a meal. It could just be, a protein yogurt and some fruit. Like, it doesn't have to be huge. You can keep a good spread of energy and protein, which is going to keep you fed. It's going to keep you recovering well, and it's going to help you build muscle throughout the day. In terms of why we're spreading it out over the 3 to 4 hours, it means that because at any given point, you know that you're only by the time you're starting to feel hungry again, you're probably no more than 2 hours away from your next meal. So usually at work, when you're distracted, when you're tired, when you just want to get out of the office for a moment in the sun, food is a good thing that we usually go down that path. But if you know that food is coming, you're less likely to make that choice to go for food, and less likely to have a pastry, less likely to grab a biscuit when you're going to get your coffee, less likely to go out and buy lunch just because you wanted some outside time. That means we're going to be more, we know the food is coming, we've got the food there, it's planned, we're less likely to go off track. In terms of the 35 to 50 grams of protein, by eating protein with every meal, we're keeping muscle recovery and the rebuilding process continuing. So it's always working for us. Now, I know that there is a lot of research that supports having big doses of protein and how it can help long-term muscle building. I know about muscle protein synthesis. I know all of this stuff. None of this information is new to me. I literally have a degree in it. But we have now gone to the point where, because science says it's okay, we're just doing it. And we're not taking into account how easy it is to get our hands on protein, how expensive protein is, the quality of protein that we're consuming, the fact that so many products that just say that they've got added protein in it. It's actually just a worse quality protein to bump that number up so they can use it as a selling point. But on top of that, we're also not thinking about how the body uses protein outside of the muscle building process. And if you do overload your gut, and this is why I have a general rule, which I'll mention in a second, but if you overload your gut, it's actually going to negatively impact your digestive system, which kind of renders the whole process kind of useless. Whereas if we just go back to basics and we go to take your body weight, put it into grams, double it, and then give yourself a plus or minus of about 10 or 15%, you're going to be in a really, really good position. Yeah. So for most fellas, that's probably going to be somewhere between 35 and 50 grams per serving. And if you have four servings of that, so you double your body weight, plus or minus 10, 15%, you have 4 servings, you're probably going to end up at somewhere between 140, 200 grams, which is going to be enough. In terms of your total daily intake, something that was told me really that I usually run my life off of, and this is how I ended up on the 35 to 50 grams 4 times a day, is in terms of your protein consumption, you want to eat enough, as much as you can, till the point as long as your gut and your wallet can handle it. So as long as it's not too expensive, and as long as you're not having gut issues. So there was a time where I was just eating as much as possible. I was probably hitting somewhere between the 250, 300 mark, and I was having digestive issues. So then I stopped eating as much, and now I don't have as many digestive issues. But I'm still getting enough protein, and I'm still building muscle, which... and even when I am doing the endurance training, when the need for protein goes up just to maintain nitrogen balance, which is a different story, I'm still there. When it comes to fruit and veg, so I like to use this rule as it's going to make sure you're hitting good areas from a micronutrient standpoint, specifically fiber. So making sure that you're properly nourished, but also it means that it's like, if you're in a specific, dieting phase and you're trying to drop a little bit of body fat, fruit and veg actually keeps you really, really full with it. Like, you can eat a huge volume of it without having to eat a lot of energy. So it's nutrient dense and calorie sparse, which means that most fruit and veg, you can eat a lot of it without actually eating a lot of energy of calories. So it's going to help you feel full and stop your reliance on hunger signals of when to eat. So your focus is going to be more on just, you eat the food because you know it's coming. You can just, a lot of vegetables are pretty high in water content. So you're actually just helping yourself be more hydrated. So that it hits from both sides. Both, it helps you feel full, and also it's going to help you be more nourished. From a whole food standpoint, and this is a pretty basic one, look, we want to get the majority of our foods from a whole food source, so less processed. The reason being is that, yes, they are going to be better for you in the long run. Yes, they're going to help you feel better. You'll have better skin. You'll sleep better. There's a lot of reasons to have mostly whole foods. However, the reason it's not 100% whole foods is because when you go down that full whole foods path, you are not giving yourself room to have processed foods, which is going to happen. If you're going to eat things that you enjoy, if you're going to go out and be social, if you're going to exist outside of your specific sphere, like if you're going to go to weddings, you're going to go to birthdays, someone's going to book a restaurant and they're going to serve food that isn't purely whole foods. If you are this 100% whole food zealot, the issue is that your body's not going to be able to process this other food, the more processed foods. And then you're going to have them and you're going to feel like shit, even worse than you would. So you kind of see it in these social media influencers that they say that all they eat is foods off a fucking chopping board. It have to be a wooden chopping board because microplastic. And then the one time they have something processed, they talk about how bad their gut is and how awful they felt, blah, blah, blah. It's if you remove something from your diet, your body's going to stop needing to produce that. So you see it all the time with people with like gluten intolerances or lactose intolerances. What happens is that for some reason, usually it's a stress thing and usually it's an alcohol and a sleep thing. Usually it's something else that's quite controllable. They're having gut issues. And so they blame it on either lactose or gluten. So they avoid they avoid them for a period. And then because if you stop putting gluten into your body's going to be like, oh, we don't need to process gluten anymore. So its ability to process gluten is going to reduce. It's the same thing with lactose. Stop putting lactose into your body's ability to process lactose is going to go down. And so then when you do have lactose, you do have gluten, your body's going to be like, whoa, shit. And it actually doesn't know how to process it. And that's where we have that bad reaction from. Whereas if you just keep it in there, the same thing with processed foods, you just microdose yourself, you're going to be fine. So in this theory, if we go for 80-20, you're still leaving room for your body to continue to do its thing. And the reason I say 80, it's not data or scientific driven. It's just an easy number to remember. And 80-20 is just a principle that typically if you apply to most things, if you're 80% good, 20% bad, you're going to end up in a good spot. So that's why it's 80-20. So once you know all this, in terms of getting this set up in a more practical sense, it doesn't take a huge amount of effort to instill it as a system. But once it is instilled, you shouldn't need to put in like a whole lot of effort to maintain it. It just kind of like runs in the background, like, passive income for my entrepreneur bros out there. So we're going to look at having our 4 meals. We just want to look at what time we're going to have them at. So some, like an 8, 12, 3, 7, maybe like 6, 10, 2, 6, depending on, what time you're waking up, that kind of thing. But the key thing is that you pick times that are going to suit you consistently. So don't pick a time where you're not going to be able to because you've got a meeting, every Friday at 10 o'clock. Don't be like, I'm going to have a meal at 10 o'clock when I'm always in a meeting. If you know that you always struggle to get out for lunch until 1 p.m. Don't be like, I'm going to have it at 12:30. Like, if you know that you're always hungry in the morning, don't push it back until have it at a time that is going to work for you and you can consistently repeat. So there's no point setting yourself up like, oh, I'd love to do it this way when it's just not going to happen. Like, have some realism about it. Once you've got your meal timing set up, then, as I said, it's going to be easier to make sure if you're eating your lunch at 12 and it's 10 o'clock and you're feeling hungry, I'm only going to get through 2 hours. You just focus on your work, that 2 hours is going to fly by, and then you'll get to the point where you can eat some food. Whereas if you don't have that plan, you don't have something to work towards. Once you know what time your meals are happening, you just need to think about composition. So as I said, we always want to make sure we have our serve of protein. So I'm big from an animal protein sources standpoint. So stuff like our beef, chicken, turkey, kangaroo, occasionally something like pork or some fish works as well. Also big on the dairy standpoint. So like milk, yogurt, protein shakes. Like some people really big into cottage cheese. I'm not, but a lot of people are. The great thing about protein is it doesn't need to be the main part of the meal. So if you're having like a vegetarian salad, you can just have like a protein shake on the side, which is great. Other options from a vegetable standpoint, there's like tofu, soybeans, other beans, chickpeas, lentils. Like lots of vegetables have some protein in them. And like if you have enough protein mixed in throughout everything to add up to the 30, you don't need to then lay a slab of steak on it. And if you want to, fucking go for broke, but you don't have to. The key thing is that we just want to make sure that we do have that protein option, that carb option, and some fruit or veg option for lunches and dinners. It's really, really easy. For breakfast, I'm a big on a smoothie or an overnight oats with some fruit on it. And then maybe if I don't have work that day, I'll have eggs on sourdough with some, veggies on the side. Our Arvo meal, I love a bit of, Greek yogurt, some fruit, maybe some oats or some muesli on top, depending on how much energy I need that day. But the reality is the world is your oyster, and you can go for faster options if you need. Like sometimes in the afternoon, if I'm on the run, I'll head over to a petrol station or like a service station, 7-Eleven, whatever. Sushi, 2 rolls of sushi and a rokabi. Done. That's fucking enough, and it's good. It fits in. Obviously, your amounts are not going to be the same as mine. Doing 20,000 steps a day, you don't need to hit that, but that's just an example. So in each meal, we've got our protein, we've got our carbs, and we've got our fruit or veg or both. Once you've nailed that, the other 2 rules tend to fall in naturally, right? So just as long as you're trying to think more whole food sources for protein, and then you're also getting your fruit and veg in, and you're doing that meal composition, typically you're going to find out that you're probably going to be somewhere around that 80-20 on the whole food standpoint. And then most of your processed foods are either going to come in as like, say, protein shake or going out to dinner. Maybe you're getting in a cheeky Messina, which if you're not having Messina, grow up. But yes, it tends to typically fall into itself pretty easily. In terms of the mistakes that people make, there's not a heap that you can specifically make, but I think the first one is going like too violent from the whole food standpoint. So they said those people who do like a whole foods only diet, it's going to work for a while. Yes, you will see some results. Yes, but in the long run, let's just dab some processed foods in there. Because as I said, the ability to process foods is maintained by processing processed foods. You stop having it, your body's going to stop being able to process it. Same thing with it's like with alcohol, right? So if you always want, if you're like, yeah, I don't want to have awful hangovers, you should be microdosing now. Let's not use that as an example. And then the other side, going too tight on the meals themselves, like sometimes I see this sometimes, and I had a client that used to make this mistake all the time because he said he was following the plan and the program, and he wasn't losing weight. And I was like, questioning me, like, am I doing? Does the plan not work? Like maybe because he's not moving as much as maybe he shouldn't be having 4 meals, blah blah blah. Then what it turns out was that he was having a very very light breakfast, and so he was so hungry and tired by the end of the day. He'd get home and have like a huge binge, and he'd eat chips and ice cream and popcorn and all this kind of stuff. I was like, oh, so it's not like that you're not eating enough. It's that you're eating all of your food at the end of the day. And because if you're consistent with your energy intake, so you're having these like decent sized meals consistently throughout the day, you're less like when you feel hungry, the amount of food you then want to consume goes up exponentially. So the hungrier you are, the longer it's been. You know what it's like, right? If you haven't eaten in a while, all of a sudden you're like, I need to have 3 meals in one. And, that's why, like for me, intermittent fasting doesn't work. But so when you are breaking that fast, your meals tend to get bigger and bigger. So for this guy, I said, dude, just eat more at breakfast, eat more at lunch. You will have less at dinner because you'll be full and you won't need the food. Like at the moment, it's part of habit and part of the fact that you are so exhausted at the end of the day because you don't have enough energy. If you eat that every 4 hours and you're eating, like, let's say someone's on 2,400 calories a day, just because it's easy from a back standpoint. You don't want to have 400 and calorie breakfast and 400 calorie lunch, because then you're going to get to the evening and you've got 1,600 calories to play with, but you're going to feel so hungry that you're more likely to go over that 1,600 at the end of the day. Whereas if you went like 700, and then 500 and then 700, perfect. Does that math check out? 700 plus 700 is 1,400. So 700, 400, and 600. Bosh. There you go. That would probably work out better. So I normally say, like, try and have, like, as I said, don't have to calorie track, but have a slightly bigger breakfast, a slightly bigger lunch, because plan your energy around when you're going to use it is probably a better way to put it. Like when you're more likely to, when you're going to need the energy. So when you're training, when you're going, a busy time at work, when you're going to be on your feet a lot, that's when you should have the energy so you don't feel awful then. And then when you're going to be sat down at night, like this, the amount of people that will come home and they'll have these like big, huge dinners and they're just going to sit there in front of the TV and not move. And then because they've not eaten enough during the day, they're super, super hungry. It's like, eat during the day and your body will use the energy and it will store it better. It will store it in muscle as glycogen stores. Muscles will get bigger. They'll burn fat better. Like it all works in a cycle, right? You just got to feed the cycle in the right direction. So yeah, if you can focus on eating when you need it rather than when you don't. And that's why this setup works, because you're going to need it. You need something bigger in the morning, bigger at lunchtime to get you through the day, especially if you've worked out in the morning. In the afternoon, you only need something that's enough to keep you at a level, to keep your energy levels so that you can finish work and get home. And then you don't need a huge dinner. You just have your dinner and then you go to bed. For instance, like if you trained after work, I would say have a smaller breakfast, and then you can have a bigger lunch and a bigger afternoon meal and then a bigger dinner. Because smaller breakfast, because you're not going to be, let's say, you're working an office job, you sat down, like, yes, you need to feed this, but you don't need to feed the muscles. So you have a smaller breakfast, you sat down, then you have your lunch, which is a little bit bigger. And that's with the goal of fueling that training session down the line. Then you have your afternoon meal, which will be more carb heavy to get you through that session. And then you have your dinner afterwards, which is going to help you recover from the session. And there you go. If you're training in the middle of the day, you'd have bigger morning, bigger lunch, bigger afternoon, smaller dinner, because you don't need it. You're going to be sat at home. So so that from that standpoint, the mistake is not eating when you need it. Eat when you need it and you'll be better. But apart from that, guys, that is basically the 4-meal method, the 4 meals per day method, and how I like to put it together. So yeah, the way that, like, all of those nutrition, like diet methods and diet plans and carnivore and keto and intermittent fast, like, they all work, but they don't work because they are a silver bullet. They work because if you eat less, you'll lose weight. If you eat less processed stuff, you'll probably feel a little bit better. Like, don't tell me that carnivore is a silver bullet. If you went from like eating McDonald's and Domino's fucking every night, and then and drinking every night, and then all of a sudden you go to carnivore, don't tell me carnivore is the silver bullet, because it's not. The issue is that you've been eating all of the shit. Like, if you're eating processed food all the time, you're going to feel like ass. Like, it doesn't matter. And then if you stop and you do something different, you're going to feel better. It doesn't matter what you do. So the key thing is here that this is the underlying structure that that it will help everything else function. If you want to drop some weight and you want to work more towards a calorie deficit, you pull a little bit of carbs out from each of your meals, you'll start to drop weight. If you want to put on weight, you put in a little bit more carbs. If you want to go less animal protein, you just have less animal protein. If you want to go more animal protein, you just have more animal protein. Like, it's a very simple plan. Shout out Simple Plan, heard of it. But all you need to do is just whatever you specifically want, you just put it through this prism and you'll get the result. So use this. This is the technique to get the result. It's like, we always use you don't want to use the wrong tool. You wouldn't use the wrong tool for the wrong goal. So if you're building a house and you need to drill a hole, you're not going to like use a screwdriver. You use a drill. So in this case, the drilling the hole is the fat loss. The building a house is having a healthy, functional body. The creation of the hole is, wait, I'm onto something here. The creation of the whole is the structure, and then the tool fits in. I'm going to figure that one better out soon. I've been talking for too long. Thank you for listening so far. So if we just round that back up, we'll pretend that last bit never happened, but we'll round it back up. 4-meal method, eat 1 meal every 4 meals a day, one every 3 to 4 hours, have 35 to 50 grams of protein in each one, have a serving of fruit at each one, have a serving of veg at each one, or both, and then just see if you can go mostly whole foods from that standpoint. But that's about it for me today. Thank you for listening to the dribble for the last 23 minutes. And if you have anything that you want me to talk about or break down in a future episode, give me a shout, give me a yell, give me a follow on Instagram, TikTok, Spotify or YouTube, however you've come across this. And please, in the description below, I'll have a link to my newsletter, my emailing list. Jump on it, because there'll be more stuff in there that you can listen to and think about, all that kind of thing. So jump onto that. But apart from that, thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for listening. I am Robbie. This is The Extraordinary Project, and I'll see you in the next one.